just before the conductor came through, all the Scots piled into the toilet stall at the back of the car. As the conductor passed the stall, he knocked and called, "Tickets, please." And one of the Scots slid a ticket under the door. It was punched, pushed back under the door, and when it was safe, all the Scots came out and took their seats. The Englishmen were tremendously impressed by the Scots' ingenuity. On the trip back, the five Englishmen decided to try this themselves and purchased only one ticket. They noticed that, oddly, the Scots had not purchased any tickets this time. Again, just before the conductor came through, the Scots piled into one of the toilet stalls, the English into the other. Then one of the Scots leaned out, knocked on the Englishman's stall, and called, "Ticket, please!" The ticket slid out the door, he picked it up quickly and closed the door. So now, we'd like to call on Tim to provide the toast to the Lassies.
Excellent. I wore my Argyle today. That's all I've got, actually. I've got a Celtic jersey from Glasgow that I thought I'd wear, but I probably offend half of you, so I decided I wouldn't wear that. So good evening, my name's Tim Calabell, and I'll be giving tonight's toast to the Lassies. When Bruce asked me to make this toast, I was a bit mystified, as it is a topic I've never really demonstrated a strong understanding of. Usually I'm fairly comfortable speaking in front of people, but when it is something I know little about, or something very personal, I get a little flustered and tongue-tied. Case in point, about 20 years ago, I somehow managed to find a woman who was able to deal with all my misgivings, and she agreed that we should wed. One of the conditions of this union was that we needed to be in a Catholic church, as her father demanded. Another condition to fulfill for couples marrying in a Catholic church was to attend a marriage encounter weekend in order to discuss issues to prepare us for wedded bliss. This occasion took place at St. Michael's Retreat in the Capel Valley just outside of Lumsden. So, on the day we were to go there, I started the weekend off by picking up my future wife late, which was a bit of an issue. I figured it was no big deal. As you can see, the retreat from the bloody highway shouldn't be that hard to find. Like all men, I assumed my keen sense of direction would get us there on time. We were the last people to show up. We rushed into the center to find all the couples had already filled a large meeting room, and when we entered, the only two seats remaining were right in the front. Everyone was already settled, so we quickly sat down. I really don't like sitting in the front, but I thought it wouldn't be much of a big deal. Better that than standing. Well, the father came in and told us all that we would be standing up and sharing with the group why we were marrying our partner. He started with a couple right beside us. Luckily, we were second. As I indicated earlier, I'm not very good in circumstances like that, so I thought I could use the extra time to come up with better things to say that I had in my head, which was absolutely nothing. So I decided to listen in and maybe steal something from these folks. They began to talk about one another and about their love for one another, and quickly they started to cry and weep. And I realized quite quickly I was in a lot of trouble. So they finished and sat down. I had to stand up, and I grabbed my wife's hand, and I turned to the congregation, all these folks, and I said, "This is my wife Shannon, and I fell in love with her because she has beautiful hair." Silence. And I smiled at her, and she looked at me, and she said, "I fell in love with him because he's funny." So as I said, women are truly a puzzle I've long tried to solve. Like Robbie Burns, when I was a young man, I thought I could charm the lassies with a quick turn of phrase. I dedicated a large proportion of my time and energy thinking of ways to strike up a conversation at my local drinking establishment, Checkers. I would concoct all kinds of ways to strike up conversations with beautiful women. For instance, I would walk up to a beautiful lass, catch her eye, lick my finger, slowly reach out, touch her on the shoulder and say, "Why don't we get you out of those wet clothes?" Sometimes I would actually hold a piece of paper, walk up to another woman, look her directly in the eye, glance down at the paper as though I was reading it, and I would ask, "Do you know how heavy a polar bear is?" The common response was a shrug. My reply, "Heavy enough to break the ice." Good luck, everyone. So I was a bit hopeless actually, and I just decided that I would stop doing that business. And one night I moved into a new apartment, and I was doing a bit of celebrating with my friends when a bunch of girls I knew happened to come into the bar. And so if you were in Checkers, there were two parts to the bar. There was the inside part and the outside part, called Scotland Yard. And so people would obviously congregate out there every once in a while, and this group of girls came in, and I noticed that there was a young woman there that I didn't know. And one of her friends, and one of my friends named Judy, was wearing a sailor hat on her head. And I decided then and there that I would go and steal the hat from her. I ripped the hat off of her head, put it on my head, and began to dance around the entire outside of the bar singing the theme song to Gilligan's Island. And I looked over at the young woman, and she started laughing, and I realized, I've got her. And I married her. So much like my wife and I, our gracious hosts, Bruce and Laura Hunter, tell the story of how they met in Checkers as well. Bruce likes to tell everyone, although he's a younger man, he was much like Robbie Burns, a silver-tongued charmer who really understood the ladies. The truth is, he's much like me and has no real understanding for a woman's attention, as the true story of their meeting reveals. So as many of you may be aware, Bruce and his family spent Thanksgiving every year in Waskesiu, where they drink, play buffalo, hike, play buffalo, play drinking games, play buffalo, fish and play more buffalo. You should join the game. It's a bit frightening, actually. One morning, Bruce woke up early, something he rarely does, and he thought he would try to outdo his brothers and catch the first fish of the trip. He took an inflatable dinghy down to the water and tried to paddle away from shore. As he's a stout Scotsman, always trying to prove his manhood, he struck out for the distant shore. As he reached the middle of the lake, a strong wind came up and he was carried off. He frantically tried to control the dinghy, but he spilled his tackle box. A fishing hook pierced the dinghy and it began to sink. Being the athlete he is, he strongly swam towards the distant island, where he ended up stranded. His family tried to look for him, but there was drinking to be done, buffalo to be played, and he was left to fend for himself. Thank God he's an avid watcher of Survivor, where he learned all the skills necessary to live on a deserted island. A couple of weeks later, he was sitting on the beach when he noticed the most beautiful creature he had ever seen emerge from the water. Laura walked out of the water and headed toward him wearing a skin-tight wetsuit with zippers all over it. She immediately walked up to Bruce and introduced herself. He grunted. She said, "Since you've been on the island for so long, I bet you haven't had a drink for a long time." She opened up one of the zippers on her wetsuit and pulled out a 25-year-old bottle of Glenlivet and a glass. He grabbed the bottle and glass, poured himself a double, and drank deeply. He couldn't believe his luck. Laura then said, "If you haven't had a drink, I bet you haven't had a smoke either." And she opened up another zipper and pulled out a pack of smokes. She passed them to Bruce. He struck some flint on a stone and sparked up a cigarette. He couldn't believe his luck. There he was, smoking and drinking with this beautiful woman on a deserted island. Laura looked down at the poor soul and took pity on Bruce. She reached for the main zipper on her wetsuit, looked Bruce directly in the eye and said, "Maybe you want to play around." Bruce's eyes lit up. He immediately knew he was in love and he said, "Don't tell me you have a squash racket." So unlike my good friend Bruce and myself, Robbie Burns never had any problems speaking to the ladies or understanding their ways, as evidenced by the fact that he sired no fewer than 13 children through known relationships with 5 different women, all the while consuming large quantities of alcohol. Fantastic. So, please charge your glasses as I offer an ode to the Lassies, pardon me, laddies. Goodness gracious. Robbie Burns was different than my kin Bruce and I. For many women he carnally knew. He did not even try. Yet the same we and he, as he held lassies dear, for their strength, good looks, and fortitude, was quite clear. Men, you might wonder how to keep a wonderful mate. Take it from a Scotsman, you've got to be great. All the Scottish brethren I know say it's not hard to impress her if under your kilt's a large Loch Ness monster. Sincerely, lads, I jest, as the last proclamation's not really true. You just need to learn the phrase, "You're right, dear," as it helps pay the dues. For if you mess with a woman, with what a woman considers her domain, you best master the 5 Ds of dodgeball, or you'll be in pain. Now's the time to charge your glasses, fill them to the rim. To the lassies, may the light that shines upon them never dim.
Here, to the lassies. To the lassies.
Thank you very much, Tim. And next up, we have Corey with a response from the Lassies.
All right, my name is Corey Miller, and Tim may know very little about the ways of women. That's true. Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
That's sad. Whatever works. All right, but I might be an even less likely candidate to perform the toast to the laddies. So full disclosure, I'm not Scottish. I was raised in a lovely yet sheltered German Mennonite community. Let's call it the colony. Just for fun. So to say the least, I was